Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As. So let me put my hat on, and let's get this started. Alright, first question. Hey Jason, I've looked everywhere on the internet as to why my deadlift and squats work your abs, not only lower back. They all give some fancy terms like intra-abdominal pressure, and do not give an exact explanation. I know it would be too complicated for some people, but I do have a background in physics and mechanics, which makes me wonder if they themselves know what they're talking about. I simply can't grasp the physics of it. Okay, good question. Good question. What we're talking about here is not the contraction you're thinking of, the lengthening and shortening of the muscle fibers necessarily. They play a stabilizing role. They play a stabilizing role. Obviously you flex your abs on the way down on a deadlift to bend over a little bit, right? But that's not actually putting work on your abs because there's no appreciable weight there. I mean, you're just bending over. And you are right, the spinal erectors are doing a lot more work, particularly on the deadlift. However, on the squat, they're also playing a stabilizing role. The spinal erectors, the lower back, shouldn't be contracting particularly on the squat either. Yet they get recruited, they get sore. Same thing, when we look at EMG studies, the lats light up on the deadlift. They light up almost as much as they do on a weighted pull-up, right? There's a stabilizing role involved with a lot of muscles, and there is some contraction involved with that. What they're talking about with the intra-abdominal pressure, what they mean is that it's pressing against the abs, and the abs are pushing back in to stabilize you. For example, if your abs went completely weak, like a noodle, and they just went limp, you would just fall over to the front, right? Now, I understand, though, that your lower back, it is contracting to help hold you upright, but your abs are playing a stabilizing role. If you didn't have abdominals, or if the muscles themselves were, let's say we injected them with something to where the neurons couldn't fire in there, and they couldn't do anything, you would fall over. You wouldn't be able to stand up straight. They play a stabilizing role. It's a support structure role. But are they actually contracting and pulling you forward? Obviously not. But they are working still to some extent. It's just a different type of work. And it certainly isn't the same enormous workload you're thinking of with a weighted crunch. But the work is there. They are actually doing some work. It's just not the same thing. It's not a full contraction. But interestingly enough, it's still funny. A lot of guys are scared of getting really big abs from doing this. But yeah, there is a contraction though involved with the intra-abdominal pressure because they're pressing back against it, and that requires them to work. Again, just a totally different type of work, and they are absolutely not going to work as hard. Your abdominals are not going to work as hard as they would on actual direct abdominal work. It's going to be dramatically less. But the reason you slowly build abs over time doing all the stabilizing work is because there's enough of it. Meaning if you're doing a lot of squatting, a lot of deadlifting, a lot of standing presses, your abs are just getting a cumulative amount of work over time. So that's what's going on. It's that these individual exercises, the volume you're doing by itself isn't that significant. It's the cumulative work they're getting from the various stabilizing roles. But think of it just like a column there helping hold you upright, if someone who's studied physics and everything else. But it is definitely less work. It's less work. All right, next question. If studies show that training 6 days a week is slightly superior than 3, can a drug-free lifter split any good programs to have the best results? How would it be with your linear hypertrophy, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? I do 2 sets, Tuesday and Thursday, Saturday I do 1 set. Thanks, coach. All right, tough question to answer, and the reason I'm going to say it's tough is because my linear hypertrophy program is for a novice. All these studies showing this additional muscle growth from maybe training 6 days a week, this is only with fairly advanced lifters. Okay, fairly advanced lifters. Novices gain muscle so easily from single training sessions, that I don't think the novice lifter should be training a lift every day other than for motor unit learning. Like if I was going to take a novice who wanted to go into powerlifting, could you start with Bulgarian light? Yeah. But if we're talking purely the hypertrophy aspect, which is what we're talking about with the higher frequency, novices stimulate an enormous amount of growth in one workout. Okay, they stimulate an enormous amount of growth. And we talk about the growth window is somewhere between 28 and 48 hours. Novices who do a significant workload are stimulating probably that full 48 hours. Like if you were to run my linear hypertrophy program as a perfect example, as a novice, that's a lot of workload. for a novice at least, you're probably stimulating the full 48 hours of growth relative to where you're at. So in that case, the novice running that particular program is probably not going to see any difference in muscle growth. All these programs, these well-written novice programs like this, are basically maximum hypertrophy programs already, the way they're written. Okay, they're maximum hypertrophy programs. You're unlikely to be able to stimulate any additional growth through minor trickery. Again, what we're talking about are more advanced lifters seem to benefit more from this. Now, I've never seen any studies done on the novice to really go into this, but if we did, I think we could predict that they're not going to see additional growth. Just like when we see extra volume thrown in on novices. Novices gain maximum bicep size from lat pull downs. Okay, total novice lifter gains as much muscle mass as they're going to gain from like 3 sets of lat pull downs. Their biceps don't grow anymore when we have them do some curls. And I suspect if we were to go to 5 or 6 days a week for the same muscles, novices are simply not going to gain additional muscle mass from it. Because again, it's so easy to make a novice lifter grow as long as they have decent workload and progression. Minor trickery like, oh, let's throw some extra isolations in. Oh, let's throw some extra days in. Let's increase the frequency. It probably isn't going to matter. It probably isn't going to matter at all. All right, next question. Oops. Gurus like Aragon and Martin Berkhan recommend 2,000 milligrams of EPA and 1,500 DHA daily for fish oil, which they pointed out requires about 5 to 6 capsules with most brands. I've been following their advice for years, but just noticed on the bottle it says do not exceed 2 capsules a day. Is this something I should be concerned about, or should it just continue to take 6 daily like they recommend? In all honesty, I remain skeptical that even going that high has any health benefits. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm extremely skeptical with that. And I like Aragon. It's also important to note, look how small and fine of a difference that is between what Alan says is a dangerous amount versus the amount that he's recommending to be optimal. People say, what do you mean? Aragon has also written that taking 10 fish oil capsules a day could be enough to cause health problems. So, 5 to 6 being the optimal amount there for which you're seeking. But the thing is, how optimal is it really? I mean, is it really that optimal? Is it necessary? Guess it depends upon the composition of the rest of your diet. I personally don't think that much is necessary. And even cardiologists and other people note that only people with certain health problems see improvements in their blood work when they go to 6. Okay, and that's the other point that needs to be made. Yeah, they're talking about maybe an ideal, but is that really necessary for everyone? Probably not. Like I said, cardiologists have looked at it and noted that people with certain types of problems with triglycerides who have certain cardiovascular diseases do see improvements on up to 6 a day. But a lot of other people, 2 or 3, is probably going to be the most you're going to see health benefits from it. To be honest, myself, I kind of quit taking fish oil even. I haven't taken any in well over a year. And to be honest, I haven't noticed any negatives in my blood work or anything else from it. So for me, this is just one less thing I have to worry about. But, is it a big deal? Probably not. They have to put those on labels just because of various issues and complications. There are going to be, for people who are on certain medications, certain health issues, yeah, the 6 could actually be a problem. So again, it's all relative, and that's why they have to put a warning like that, do not exceed 2 a day, because there can be medication interference and everything else. Like, for example, if you take aspirin every day, the additional blood thinning from this could cause problems with people being free bleeders, clotting. It could be all sorts of issues and complications to it due to interferences with commonly taken things. So again, if you're taking aspirin every day, which is also a blood thinner, taking it with fish oil, which is also a blood thinner, exceeding that amount could, in theory, be dangerous in the long term. So again, that's why they have stuff like that. All right, next question. Hi Jason, when I do sumo deadlifts, my fingernails scrape against my legs, sometimes causing my pants to tear and my legs to bleed. What am I doing wrong? Or do you know of a solution? I use the hook grip. The mixed grip is uncomfortable and awkward, although I'm fine with the mixed grip from conventional. I'm much better with sumo, strange since I'm a short guy, but I mostly use conventional for training and sumo for maxes. No, it's not strange because you're a short guy. The sumo reduces range of motion. If you're short, you don't pull the weight very far anyway. Sumo cuts that down. That's why I don't recommend sumo really for general buildup. I recommend it purely to power lifters who have the right leverages for it. As far as scraping yourself, you're not gripping the bar correctly. Your legs should never be really in a plane of motion. Like your fingernails shouldn't be able to scrape your legs, even if you have massive thighs on a sumo. Or you might be doing some sort of mixed stance on the sumo with your hands too wide. Your hands are supposed to be very narrow on a sumo deadlift. Okay, they should be inside of your thighs the entire time, even all the way near the top. So watch any top-level lifter who does do the sumo deadlift. Watch Dan Green and watch where his hands are relative to even his massive thighs. You shouldn't be able to do that. You're probably gripping the bar too wide, combined possibly with your sumo stance being too narrow. A sumo stance is very, very wide. I see a lot of people who do a sumo stance and their toes are 5 inches from the plate on each side. That's not how it works. You will almost drop the plate on your toes on every single rep when a sumo is actually done in the way that the sumo deadlift is intended. So that could be another factor too. You might not be standing wide enough. You might not be gripping the bar narrow enough, or possibly a combination of the two. And it's usually, I suspect, going to be the combination of the two that's your problem. Alright, next question. Any personal recommendation for weekly tonnage limits before recovery is impacted? I recently cut back to about 3,500 kilograms for deadlift and squat, 3,000 kilograms for close grip bench press and rows, 2,500 kilograms for push press. I feel better and more recovered, gaining strength, but my ego feels like I'm sandbagging / holding back. You're recovering better, you're moving a lot of tonnage, yet you feel like you're sandbagging. You need to check your ego at the door. In fact, what I would say, there are no recommendations on personal tonnage, because tonnage is not just relative to work capacity, it's relative to your technique and leverages. Meaning, one person this might be deadlifting the bar 5 inches shorter than you are. Well, if you're moving the bar 20% further than he is, that's 20% more tonnage if you were to try to compare them across the board. Remember, your tonnage will change based upon differences in technique and range of motion and stuff. That's why we just look at general tonnage, look at what you can recover from personally using the technique and the form that you use. Okay, and that's where you find your personal limits of where recovery starts to become a problem, soreness becomes an issue, everything else, and cut it back below that threshold. Are you sandbagging? Yes. But you don't want to run, since you're using kind of a term we always used in street racing when I was younger, you also don't want to run wide open throttle all the time either. Again, you got to learn to undulate these things. You got to learn to find the ebb and flow of these things. So what if you're sandbagging? So what if you're leaving some in the tank? Are you making progress? Are you overtraining? Are you sore? Are you having recovery issues? No? Then who cares if you're leaving a little in the tank? You don't think you can grow with 90% effort? Every study in the world says that you can. That there's no difference between 90% effort and 100% effort in terms of the progress you make. So if that's the case, why are we worrying about it? Why are you worried about it? What's the problem? There is no problem. You're making it up in your head with your ego. Stay with what you can recover from. Alright, next question. Hello Jason, do you have recommendations for training in your late 40s? How would you modify your novice program, if at all, for a person over 40? Thanks Jason, love your videos. Honestly, my novice program, I would run the cutting version. That's what I would recommend. You don't have the recovery that a 20-something-year-old has anymore in your 40s. And that's okay. Doesn't mean you can't make good progress. But my novice program is a perfect example. Run the cutting version. Cut down to 3x5 instead of 5x5. Cut the progress rates in half. In fact, if you want to add weight every other workout instead of every workout, try doing it that way. Cut back the progress, cut the volume, and just move forward. The other thing I recommend for people getting older, in addition to just slower progression, pay more attention to your connective tissue. Pay attention to connective tissue. It is almost always going to be your limiting factor in recovery. When you get sore tendons, I don't care where they're at. If you have tendons that are getting inflamed, it's time to take a deload. Even if you're running my novice program that doesn't have deloads programmed in, you need to deload. As we get older, we can't play with this sort of stuff. We've got to be smarter. We have to be smarter. We have to listen to our body. We have to pay attention to our recovery. If we want to continue to make progress and we want to do so injury-free, we have to train smarter. than the kids do. And that means your ego cannot get in the way. All right, ego lifting hurts tons of these kids, tons of them. It will hurt you 3 times as fast as it will them. So check your ego at the door. Stay within your limits. Listen to your body. All right, listen to your body. That is the #1 thing that I recommend for people over 40 as you're getting older, because again, your connective tissue is always going to be your limiting factor. And when you surpass the limits of that connective tissue, don't be surprised if you eventually either rip something or if you get tendonitis and inflammation from it that hurts so bad that it lasts for the next year. All right, when you overextend your connective tissue as you get older, it doesn't just bounce back in a week or two. Like it does with the kids. The kids can just take a quick deload when they're really hurting bad, and in a week, 2 weeks, they're good to go again. For us, inflamed and sore connective tissue, can seriously impede your training, possibly permanently. All right, we don't have those sort of options. We can't be stupid. We can't have an ego when we train as we get older. And I'm saying this as a guy who is now 40. I'll be turning 41 later this year. I still lift heavy. I still train hard. But you leave your ego at the door as you get older. All right, next question. Hi Jason, I found your video on front squats and deficit deadlifts very interesting regarding recovery and axial loading. My issue is with a powerlifting goal in mind, but not at least for 10 months. How much carryover do these lifts have to the back squat and conventional dead? Not only in terms of the motor patterns, but in terms of the amount of load you're getting your body used to handling. I know closer to the meet performing the competition lifts is mandatory, but would I be leaving money on the table by focusing on the front squat and deficit deadlifts for the next few months? Thanks. No, you won't be leaving anything on the table. They're a similar motor pattern, so you're learning part of the motor pattern, and they will shore up most of the weak links you're going to develop on these lifts, okay? Front squats and deficit deadlifts are amazing accessories for the deadlift and the squat. They will, as like I said before, give you potential for more hypertrophy. You can build up using these. And then when you decide, okay, I'm going to start getting ready for competitive powerlifting, then fine, go over to your competition lifts. But you're not leaving anything on the table. The same muscles are involved, but like I was saying before, you have more potential for hypertrophy, and both of these exercises tend to shore up the muscular weak links and imbalances that usually plague people on these big lifts. In fact, you're going to find that you're going to be extremely strong on your deadlift. In fact, doing both of these and maximizing hypertrophy and strength and all the muscles involved in the front squat and the deficit deadlift are going to make you probably a better deadlifter by the time you switch over to the normal stuff than you would have been before. The thing you're going to notice immediately though when you switch over to the conventional and the back squat is that your recovery is going to be less. So you're going to have to scale back, and you're going to have to focus more on your specificity of training, but that's okay because you've already done your accessory work, a lot of your accessory work ahead of time. I'd go so far as to say that once you learn the motor patterns for the new lifts, the competition lifts, you could go straight into some Bulgarian lifestyle training. If you've built a solid foundation with the deficit deadlift and the front squat, and you switch over to high specificity of training, using something like Bulgarian light, I think that you're going to find that your squat and your deadlift just soar at a massive rate. And like I said, it's going to seem easier to you to do something like that because you're going to be used to doing higher workloads, because you can recover better from these two. That again, you're going to find that it's actually going to feel like easier work when you get over to the full specificity of training. But again, the thing you need to always remember, accessory lifts can be used to build all of your size. Right, they can be used to build all of your size if you have to, and in this case they offer more hypertrophy potential. Then the motor unit learning will come very, very fast when you switch over. The motor unit learning will come very fast when you switch over. Yes, you're going to have to get used to heavier loads because you won't get that on these, but so what? That's just a motor pattern thing. That's a motor pattern thing, and you will have already built up all the support musculature in your core and everything else to be able to handle those heavier loads, right? So if that's the case, it'll be fine. You can absolutely do this and focus heavily on these two. And if you want to add in some of the others, you don't have to exclude them completely. Your competition list, you can start working them a little bit now. It's fine. Just regulate everything. Pay attention to your body. Pay attention to your recovery. And you'll be fine, brother. Not a problem. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative. And I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.